Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Well, it's Friday, June the 24th, finally. And it's a beautiful morning at that. I'm Kaide Okikulu.
Yes, indeed. I am grateful it's Friday. Good morning. Thank you for sharing your day with us. It's Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. And I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
Well. Quite a number of things still playing out, and many still trying to digest what's going on, especially when you know, this case about former deputy president of the Senate, Ekweremadu. It's so many things unfolding at the moment, but we'll see how that plays out. Of course, you expect the dailies to reflect that, so that's where we'll start off right away, because hopefully we'll see how much of that we can take as we progress. We're trying to digest everything ourselves here.
Yeah.
So take a look at Nigerian Tribune for a start. That's the first paper we've got for you here. So there you go. Alleged organ harvesting. You know, that's what it is, because it matters in court. So they're trying to see what actually transpired. So all of those facts or whatever it is behind the scenes will be laid bare right there at that magistrate court. But look at the big lead. How Ekweremadu wife landed in UK court. Yeah, that's the big one right there. So, but they've got a host of riders now. Case involves boy, 15, brought into UK from Lagos. Ekweremadu wife deny human trafficking, exploitation allegations, denied bail. Case resumes July 7. Document in circulation shows Ekweremadu informed UK High Commission about daughter's kidney donor. So, a different twist to the entire scenario. Because what does informing them mean? What does that entail? And so, just so many things about this one. And that picture right there, boy, we should have even started out playing you that particular picture. What a scenario it was. You know, in this country, you're never short of some of these kind of things that you just see time and again, and they always come in droves at you. Before you think one is gone, bam, the country hits you with another. And that image there is a lawyer appears in the Supreme Court in, what's this? Olokun priest's regalia. Is it God of what now? God of
Help us out, Bukola.
Kaide, am I a traditionalist? Have I ever occurred to you as a traditionalist?
I'm just saying, I mean, Olokun, I think Olokun is, don't worry, we'll get it for you. Never mind.
Well, perhaps a chief priest of you know, one of the tribes.
Okay, chief priest of something.
State. Chief priest of something.
Oh, right. That's
the man's name sounds Irobo-like.
But look at the rider.
Rather.
I see.
He says his kids will do same in school.
So watch out for his kids today in school.
Oh,
and maybe
dear.
other kids as well.
And you know what? He says, well, look, this is the Supreme Court ruling. What are you people talking about? That's why I'm doing this.
Yes, indeed. So there's a deeper message.
Well, I don't know if there's really a message, or that's just him, you know, expressing himself, I mean, in line with the judgment. But he said something quite interesting. You know, I was smiling through that video, honestly. I got the message, but, you know, I couldn't help but smile. And he said, you know, he appeared before the Lords, and the Lords were pleased with him. And I just...
Whoa, they were pleased with him.
You know, I'm paraphrasing, but it sounds like they were happy to see him. Like, oh, good, way to go, right? So I'm looking out for people who will dress to work today. Perhaps, I mean, you may have found more people dressed to work or to school or whatever in their traditional or religious attire. I think interesting times we're in.
Just in case you're you know, a preacher in church, you know, and you're so into your faith, you know, you carry your faith, you wear it as a toga. You could come, you know, on Sunrise Daily with your cleric's collar, and it will still be okay, fine, because the Supreme Court has ruled freedom of association,
and that's what you
freedom of religious expression.
And after the month or where you get the query again.
Wait, does that then mean that the Supreme Court has inadvertently stirred up something that they never thought about?
Perhaps, really.
So all of these, remember how they always talk about the noble profession, how you need to be prim and proper, getting into that. And now he wears this, and he says, Lord, they were pleased with him. So someday, even throughout the week, who knows?
Well,
this is not my religion. The wig will not be, the gods will not allow him to wear it. And you never know. So, what does they say? Never cease.
We don't know if this is a one-off satire, you know, to mock the Supreme Court's judgment.
Satire or attire?
Satire with the use of an attire.
Because it didn't look like, he sounded like he was being honest. You know, that
he said he's going to keep doing, his kids will do it at school.
He has to draw the circle around his eyes so he can see evil spirits, because, I mean, he says he wants to be close to the spirits. Wow. I know that there's always that, you know, I don't know, there's a tendency to see it from the satire angle, but perhaps it's just being free and just trying to live his life.
There you go. That's Tribune today.
Take a look at Daily Trust. Well, Daily Trust leads with, well, maybe I'll start with the picture on the front page of a Daily Trust. It's not satire or the attire. It's the reality that people are facing, particularly in Abuja. The fuel scarcity is still biting hard. Abuja's case is peculiar, and it's worrisome, really, because Abuja, as I said, is like a stone throw from the presidential villa. So you expect that at least, you know, the things that Abuja people feel will be felt quickly by the seat of power. But there you go. That's what they have. But the big story is different. It's on the Ekwerimadu's case. Ekweremadu wife risks life imprisonment in UK to remain in custody till July 7th. That's the date for the next hearing. Victim, a minor. That's coming from the prosecutor. And you see, it's for my daughter's kidney transplant, ex-deputy Senate president. So, it's still a lot to digest, really. I know there's always a tendency to bring in different stories to this, because people really want to know an organ, do I say transplant or donation or harvesting, is a new thing in Nigeria. It's not something you hear every day in Nigeria, as in other climes. So naturally, this is a big one. We'll definitely be getting some insights in the coming hours. You see,
even though I had a doctor who told me that they were shocked that a grown man actually approached them and said he hears that, you know, some persons do this kind of things, that please can they direct him to where he can to sell his kidney? Yeah,
there's a part, I think, is it in Afghanistan, that most men there, you can see the mark on their stomach, because they've actually donated to either take care of families. I mean, there's a picture out there you can check on the internet. Yeah. So really, it's a thing. Some people use it
and it's growing. I don't know if it's related, but I've heard of a case where a young woman, unmarried, was donating her eggs, and then she fell ill and had to be taken back home, you know, to Ondo State for spiritualists to, you know, to heal her or something. So I don't know if that is organ donation, you know, or organ harvesting, but I think it was with her consent. So if it was with her consent, it can't be called organ harvesting now. But there's some sort of, you know, willful donation of organs.
You know, still a lot to digest in that one. By the way, organ harvesting can actually be legal until it's illegal without consent. I mean, you see people signing saying, I need to actually give out my, my kidney or my eye, whatever, when I pass on. As I said, it's a lot. Let's move on. Front page of a Daily Trust. Wike's romance with APC LP raises dust in PDP. Yeah, you've seen those meetings the governor had with different people across party lines. As you'd expect, lots of people are thinking. Rivers governor weighs options. No crisis in our party, PDP. Bala Mohammed, others move to placate governor. So that's what you have. I'll just mention this as I wind up on the first page. The person who attempted third term didn't end well, Buhari. So he was speaking with the British Prime Minister. He said a lot of things, actually.
I wonder who is this person?
I know, right? Question of the day. That's a story on the inside page. He also said, when the British Prime Minister asked, what can we do to help security? The president said, well, start with Libya, all right? We know what happened in Libya. So maybe you should try to stabilize Libya first, because essentially we're at the receiving end of all the unrest in Libya. So let's try to stabilize Libya. Then we can talk about this. You know, that for me, I'm paraphrasing, by the way, but way to go. That's the Daily Trust newspaper.
Best at his wits, right? Okay, from the Daily Trust, let's flip to the Vanguard newspaper this morning. And speaking of pictures, the Vanguard newspaper decides to go with two pictures. You know, the man with the satirical attire with a message for the Supreme Court, and some bit of political highlight from Delta State. You could see, or you can see on your screen there, the governor arriving home after what seems to be a victorious exploit in Abuja, having emerged the presidential, the running mates to the presidential candidate of the PDP. That's the Delta State governor there. But more importantly, let's look at the big story, how we nabbed perpetrators of Owo massacre. That's an interesting one that should continue to unfold if you go by the anger and, the continuous mourning in Owo, Ondo State following the June the 5th massacre of innocent worshippers. Let's take a very quick look at the riders. Arrested suspects, not ISWAP, Amoteco source. Recovers weapons, vehicle. Nabs 71 other criminals in 1 month. We're not aware, says the police. Now, Catholic Church can Olowo keep mum. They should be paraded. That's victim's brother. And it's time for state police. That's coming from Afeni Ferry. And finally, from the rider, as Oyo government registers commercial motorcycle operators. That's the big story from the Vanguard. But won't let Vanguard go without taking a very quick look at Mr. and Mrs. But first of all, Kaide, you want to say something?
In the midst of that Amoteco and Owo massacre, there's the elephant in the room. Police saying we're not aware. And I wonder what that means, because in terms of prosecution, in any case, you'll need the police in on this one.
Yeah.
How is the police not aware?
Well, that's what there needs to be, better collaboration between themselves, because these kind of things, it won't be far from, because look, they might, when the operational world thought, how in the world will Amotekun catch the people, parade them? Okay.
Is it supposed to be a war of supremacy between the police and Amotekun?
I said might.
Aren't they supposed to be working together?
Might, not is, not definitely.
I mean, this has been highlighted even
these
at the
kind of
highest
things
levels.
will play out. We see these things behind the scenes. They play themselves out. There's rivalry. And so, but besides, the police is the law. They're the ones who are set up. They will do the prosecution. They will do the confirmation. They will do the official arrest. Even if Amotekun arrest them, they have to hand over to police to prosecute. So ultimately, it ends with the police. So yes, even when they set up Amotekun, they said it was to complement the role of the police. So they have to ensure these kind of things don't happen, such that at the end of the day, because of this, these chaps could be let go.
I think it's important to emphasize that if they were not aware, upon,
now they're
briefing
aware,
the press, by Amotekun, now they're aware. So it's a
by
sticking
press
point.
briefing? Okay, we should
police has a police public relations officer who should be aware of such things.
Press briefing is not necessarily reporting to the police, they'll tell you. So we see these things every day. So these are things you may expect to happen. Ordinarily, when you see that kind of thing, you expect it to act. But you see them, well, look, we don't have a reporter. They will tell you that. So what would you do?
There are dozens of family members seeking justice right now. In fact, some of them still mourning.
We see these things every day here. So,
The police, Ondo State Police Command, now
police
you're aware.
Police is your friend, don't
Now
forget.
you're aware. Okay, just before we exit the Vanguard, there's an interesting one from Mr. and Mrs. this morning. And Mr. is holding Mrs. closely. He says, "Dear, you are my consensus candidate. I don't need any delegates to decide for me." That's Mr. And Mrs. says, "You don't need any delegate. That's the word of stingy men, and stingy men don't make good husbands." And then Mr. replies, "At least I paid your bride price."
Well, how much was the dollar to the naira then? Really?
Maybe that bride price needs renewing.
But we didn't delegate when the bride price was being paid.
But lovely words, I must say, from Mr. this morning. Way to go.
Okay. Malkwe?
Well, good morning, Buki, and good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Nigeria. It's a rainy day here in the Federal Capital Territory, so I imagine that, well, the roads were quite free on my way to work this morning. I imagine that many people living in the FCT are still very much in their beds under their duvets. Well, let's look at what leadership has for you this morning. They're up bright and early giving you the headlines. "I can't dare Nigerians with a third term," PMB tells UK Prime Minister. Says the last person who tried it didn't end well. Rules out another bail for Kanu. UK pledges military support against Boko Haram terrorism. It's a page 4 read for you. There must be a reason why the Prime Minister, why the President must have told the Prime Minister this, but page 4 will give you all of the details. Ekweremadu wife remanded in UK prison over alleged organ harvest, and that story is also there for you on page 7. Look at the story. PNID fraud. Court convicts, winds up Marquardt Nigeria Limited. Now, which court? You might need to flip to page 6 to get the details because the PNID story was quite messy. You might want to look at page 6 to get the details of which court is convicting which company and where this company, Marquardt Nigeria Limited, was actually convicted. And look at this senatorial race. Falana faults APC over submission of Lawan Akpabio's names. That is also there. But if you're a little bored with the headlines, I think you should flip to the back page this morning. Conversation with ASUU seems pretty interesting. Naked Supreme Court dance, not a bad thing after all. That's what he's writing about. And your guess is as good as mine on just what the topic is. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
I'll take a look at The Guardian. I doubt if you'll be entirely bored with this one because who knows, look at that. FG's auto gas plan stalls amid costly diesel poor planning. Failure frustrates conversion scheme from diesel to CNG petrol engines. FG explains progress despite low enrollment. Oh, okay. People are supposed to go out and enroll and get this done. Oh boy. Maybe you need to find out, okay, why are people not, coming forward?
Where would you even go to in the first place?
So
how much does it cost? Lots of questions, really, and it was a good thing. It still is a good thing.
That's what it's poor planning.
Yeah, because diesel is expensive, petrol is scarce. Imagine you had your gas-powered vehicle and you just drive through the traffic or the queues and just go to work and all that. But here we are.
And in a world where other countries are already exploring alternative sources of energy, but they're battery-powered cars, these days. But Nigeria is still struggling to make fuel available. PMS. I agree with you, Kadi. Maybe we should remove the spirit and to be.
You see, I have a convert here this morning.
That will be the day when this sails through because the countries plan with their natural resources. They plan based on their strength. So if you want to do this, are we really sure we want to do this? I don't know. Look at the riders. We can't afford 5 million naira truck conversion rate, NATO says. 5 million naira for conversion. And then, Ipman, without petrol subsidy, Nigerians would have been paying 900 naira per litre. They will always tell us this kind of things anyways, so what should we expect? You shouldn't be surprised at this, should you? How much are you paying for diesel? That's regulated anyways. How much? How much was it?
900. Really.
2 months ago. How much is it now? How much would it be in a month's time? So this kind of things, you just ask yourself, this things as if nothing is in charge, no one is in charge,
but
no frame.
How would Nigerians be paying 900? I don't get it. I thought landing costs, at least at most, was 400, 450.
Don't bother yourself. These things are usually not straightforward because they tell us all sorts of narrative, even when it's clear that look at what you see.
Oh, we're using the dollar. Oh, the amount it's sold in the US, right?
If it's worth anything, the marketers use diesel for their operations. And if they were to calculate, the capital, for operations and impute that cost on what they sell, as the pump price of petrol, shouldn't we be paying way above 165 naira per litre?
But is it 900? So that means the government is essentially paying, 700 and...
700
over 700 naira subsidy right now?
Even the tankers who are supplying the fuel use diesel. So, there you go.
There's something not adding up.
Of course.
And look at the other one. Why Nigeria has one of the world's worst vaccination rates. So, that's The Guardian this morning.
Well, Nigerian News Direct is next with this one. Osun 2022. We have zero tolerance for failure at Amutel's campaign council. I think yesterday was a launch of a campaign council to be headed by the governor of Lagos. Also have the governor of Kano and, what some term as heavyweights, or is it big wigs? All those terms, political terms. But hey, that's the plan for the Osun governorship election. But more importantly, we don't want to see all the, vote buying, the Boko Sebe kind of talk or violence. And I think this is something that should be, largely talked about, even from the bigwigs or heavyweights, whichever one you want to call them this morning. A couple of other stories on there. Alleged organ harvesting, former Deputy Senate President Ekweremadu wife risk life imprisonment in UK, as well as other stories for you on the Nigerian News Direct.
And from there, let's quickly take a look at the Nigerian Tribune this morning. And there are some interesting stories above the nameplate. But before that, let's look at the big story. Alleged organ harvesting. That's the big talking point, on the lips of every Nigerian right now. And we'll be taking a closer look at that later on. How Ekweremadu wife landed in UK court. What are the riders saying? Case involves boy, 15, brought into UK from Lagos. Ekweremadu wife deny human trafficking, exploitation allegations. Denied bail. Case resumes July the 7th. And document in circulation shows Ekweremadu informed UK High Commission.
I think double helping. The second helping, I think, that's what you're trying to give them. So it's understandable. That picture is, it never gets off your mind so easily.
You have to take it twice. Take the Nigerian Tribune twice.
That's the Nigerian Tribune.
Not taking it. Maybe new telegraph. It's a new telegraph. Okay, let's take a look at New Telegraph for you this morning. Human organ trafficking. How Sonia's kidney problem landed Ekweremadu wife in UK court. Sonia apparently is the name of their daughter who has the kidney issue. Page 5 will give you all of the read here. Ex-Deputy Senate President fully disclosed reasons for taking donor to London. That's the rider to the story. That's someone also speaking. The ex-Senate President fully disclosed reasons for taking donor to London. That story is on page 5 for you. So it looks like a lot of papers have been digging to try and unravel just what transpired. I mean, how the ex-Deputy Senate President got in this mess in the very first place. Look at this. Rising insecurity. Protect people of Southeast. Reps tell federal government. Say unlicensed non-state actors, others causing mayhem in the zone should be disarmed. Seek measures to halt money laundering through gaming. Security, welfare, people's happiness utmost in governance. That's from Oshibajo. And look at this on top of the nameplate. Dambata 5G deployment may face resistance in Nigeria. We'll have to leave it there for New Telegraph newspapers.
All right, there you go. So that ends a look at some of the dailies here today. I know, quite a lot to digest. And you just wonder, don't you? Well,
it's a breakfast show.
So absolutely. So you can have...
Anything can happen on a breakfast show.
Yeah, this is appetizer. We'll get into the buffet in a moment.
And there's dessert.
Oh, wow.
Well, just tell us what you think, We'd love to hear from you. But we will be back in a moment, so stay with us. Go get for tea. We'll be right back.
I'll just tell you what the Electoral Act says. The Electoral Act says that for the purposes of nominating candidates, there must be a convention, and INEC must be invited to that convention. And the process will either be through direct, indirect, or consensus, okay? And there's another clause in the Electoral Act that any political party that fails to comply with the provisions cannot assume to have nominated anybody. So I'll stop at that. And I know why you're asking that question. And, all the things that have been published in the newspaper in the last few days, INEC has not issued any statement. We have not issued any document to say this is a list of candidates for this position for the 2026 general election. And if you look at the 2023 timetable and schedule of activities, we have a timeline for that.
Okay, so tell us straight away, can a political party replace their vice presidential candidate having submitted the list to INEC?
Well, substitution is allowed under certain circumstances.
Such as?
Well, I don't know what people are talking. It's just speculation.
That's what?
Like when people ask me, I ask them, did you ask the party?
Indeed.
And the party said...
Indeed. As a matter of fact, we have one, if there's anyone I am quite certain of, because the interview was conducted right here in our studios, is that of the candidates of the Labour Party. The Dr. Doyin Okukwe, whose name was submitted as vice presidential candidate, confirmed that indeed he is a placeholder in the meantime, until they're able to reach a substantive conclusion on who precisely will be the running mate to their candidate.
Well, you know, it's a controversial thing I don't want to talk about, but we have our rules and regulations. Mm-hmm. And when you are substituting, there are conditions. For instance, if a candidate dies, you can substitute. You know, if, for instance, you nominated somebody and before the date of the election, the person dies, you can substitute. But I don't think that there is any place in our laws for that term called placeholder. So I don't know where the term came from.
Well, yes, we will talk about that placeholder matter in a moment. Yes, we also have been joined by Mr. Ebunlu Adegbero, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well,
good morning, Chebalin. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, you know, ever since we spoke, so many things have happened, you know, these days in this country. Before you say Jack Robinson, several things have happened in quick succession, you know. But now, let's start off with the lawyer, you know, when he got to the courts and came in that attire, and he says, well, the judges were very, I think they were pleased with him as a result of the Supreme Court judgment. That's why he wore this to court. But I mean, Nigerians know how the noble profession, as you refer to it, prim and proper, you're expected to be, you know, appear before, you know, your lordship. But coming with this, what does that, look, what goes through your mind when you saw this?
Thank you, Chemalin. I think that, I believe Learned Counsel did not appear before the Supreme Court as a lawyer. Number one, he had no case before the court. Number two, he was not representing any party before the court. Number three, no matter was listed on that court list requiring his appearance as counsel or legal representative for any party. So I would take it that he went to that court as a Nigerian. It will probably be a coincidence that he's a lawyer. And he went there to make a statement to the Supreme Court, I believe, in relation to the judgment of the court concerning the freedom of worship, religion, the freedom of conscience, and thought. And I think the statement probably he's making is that there's need for caution on matters relating to law and religion. Because, I mean, generally, religious matters should be matters reserved for private observance. And the states and our institutions need to exercise some caution between enforcing the rights of others and also protecting the rights of others. I have since got to learn that the wearing of hijab, especially when it's properly regulated, is part of the tenets of the exercise of the Islamic faith. And that needs to be accorded sufficient respect because I also did some study and discovered that perhaps that is part of the principles governing the exercise of that particular faith. You know, but the thing is that the Supreme Court ought to have weighed in respect of judging the exercise of that right with the right of others, because I'm situating the judgment within the context of attending public schools, because the case started in Lagos State, where pupils who were attending public schools were not allowed to dress in a manner that accords with the exercise of their faith. You know, so it shouldn't be a generic decision that will probably cause some kind of controversy nationally. So I believe that the context of that judgment is limited to the issues before the court, to the extent that in public schools, where everybody is allowed to attend, you will not discriminate against people on the ground of the exercise of their faith. But Chamberlain, the exercise of that right is also must be weighed against the rights of others. For instance, maybe you opened a private school and it's your money that you deploy to open that school, and then you open it to people to attend. For instance, these private universities, maybe it's an Islamic school or a Christian school. You wouldn't take these judgments to, for instance, a private Christian school funded privately by the owners, and then insist to impose your own faith upon them on the basis of the Supreme Court judgment, or you go to an Islamic school, or you seek to impose your own Christian doctrine upon them based on the Supreme Court judgment. So I think that there's need for proper definition so that we don't cause undue controversy. But for my learned friend, I think he went there to make a statement, not as a lawyer.
So if he had a case listed and he was appearing for someone before the judges, can he not appear like that because he's trying to give the impression that he can, perhaps saying that the court is a public place?
Well, I think that it's for the court to give a proper interpretation as to whether he can appear. But as a member of the legal profession, we have our own dress code. We have our own rules guiding appearance in court. Because in the judgment of the Supreme Court, the case made by the people who took the case to the court is to the effect that there's no regulation in Lagos State in force on what should be worn in public schools by pupils who attend those schools. And so to that effect, there was nothing to discriminate against anybody who appeared in the exercise of their faith if it's required. But in the legal profession, just like in the journalistic profession, in the churches or other professions in the armed forces, there must be a regulation for appearances, for dresses, and if you violate that, you may have to face the internal procedure for discipline within those particular professions.
So if we hypothesize a bit, if the state had laws concerning dress code, will the case have appeared, or the judgments have appeared or have been ruled differently on that particular matter?
I think that was the point made because, our Constitution, the rights granted in the Constitution are not absolute. Section 45 of the Constitution allows the government, the National Assembly, and lawmakers to make laws to derogate from the rights granted under the Constitution. So I think the point that the Supreme Court was making is that there is no law made by the House of Assembly of Lagos State derogating from the rights to freedom of religion, freedom of expression, assuming the Lagos State government had made a regulation prescribing the kind of uniform to be worn in public schools, and then there is a violation, then it will be justified to deny people attending those schools. So you must situate every judgment within the facts of that case. And I don't think the judgment of the Supreme Court is a blanket expression of taking dresses to public places anyhow. It was limited to the issue of the Lagos State circumstance, which did not have a law in place prescribing which uniform pupils should wear in secondary school. I don't think that would be a precedent for instance, a Christian to go to a mosque and say because it's a mosque and a judgment of the Supreme Court, you will wear a cassock. Or for a Muslim to take a hijab and enter a church and insist on participating in the activities of the church. I don't think we should interpret it to that extent. And I think that it's important that the court should more or less stay away from religion. Nigeria cannot be described as a religious state. We're a secular state by virtue of Section 10 of our Constitution. So we need to be cautious because of the sentiments attached to religion generally in Nigeria.
And I think it's important to make that point because people watch and they might get conflicting signals, essentially. But since this is about the Lagos State issue particularly, you're taking this case by case. So first, a student today, based on that judgment, can appear in school with the kind of dressing that we saw the lawyer in. Is that true? Is that correct?
I think that as of today, if Lagos State government is yet to make any law prescribing the kind of uniform to be worn by pupils who attend public schools, and I emphasize public school, the Supreme Court judgment is not applicable to private schools. So if there is no law, it's possible for Malane French Chief Omoebo, as he has threatened that his children will attend school in that regalia, it is possible for them to appear in that regalia in public schools. If Lagos State is yet to make any law prescribing the kind of uniform to be worn by pupils attending its public schools, it's possible to appear in that regalia, sir.
You know, so I see people perhaps trying to then extrapolate this, maybe even take this further. And the joke has been made that some employees might appear at work, you know, judging from that particular Supreme Court pronouncement and say, well, I have freedom of religion, you know, freedom of association to taught and all of that. And they can always have that Supreme Court judgment, at least to show the employer. So is that taking it too far as well? I know you have said, you know, we should, I mean, the court should maybe stay away from religion, but clearly they have mixed so far, and we don't know how far this will go. So just to guide someone who might want to try that, is that the way to go, or are you calling for caution?
Absolutely, that's not the way to go. For instance, private companies have regulations on dress code for their members of staff. And if you go as a member of staff of that organization and you run contrary to the existing regulation on dressing, of course, it's a contract of employment. Your employment can be determined on that basis, and you will not have any remedy at all in law. And you cannot rely on the Supreme Court judgment to violate the contract you signed, willingly agreeing to abide by the codes of ethic of your company. So it cannot be a basis at all for people to claim to wear any dressing to appear anyhow. And I think, Kayode, honestly, because I told you that I have, in the course of my engagement in this matter, also got to know that even the hijab itself, it's not supposed to be all manner of coverings. It's a particular way of exercise of faith by which female adherents of the Islamic faith are expected to cover their hair. And I think it should be moderately done, you know, so that it doesn't also elicit reaction from other people. So if you want to wear the hijab, for instance, especially in public institutions, it will be probably in exercise and demonstration of a moderate exercise of that faith by covering the hair. But when you do it in such excessive way, it may also provoke the kind of thing that the lawyer has done. So I think the useful guide is to be moderate in the exercise of the rights that is being granted by the Constitution.
Mr. Adegboru, I pick up on the first point you made, that the lawyer went there not as a lawyer, but as an individual making a statement. But right above that satirical attire was his lawyer's gown, and atop his head was the wig. You know, so that apart, then secondly, which should be the strongest lesson here? The first point that you made about the Supreme Court should be careful in making judgments, you know, by being sensitive to other people's rights besides a section of the population, or the fact that the Lagos State government hasn't made any law about how students should dress to school, hence perhaps it's a free-for-all. People, your other pupils can decide what to wear to school. So which lesson should trump the other right now?
There are three things I would like to state, and it's that for the practitioners of faith, whether Islamic faith, traditionalists, or Christians, we do not set out to provoke embers of crisis in a nation. We need peace in the land for there to be development, for there to be growth. These schools are already in existence, especially the private schools. You know the nature of the schools you want to attend. For instance, let's say a university set up by missionaries. It was particularly set up for a purpose. And if you want to attend that school to benefit from the objective of the owners of the school. You can't use your own religious faith to disrupt their objective or planning. Otherwise, there will be a different motive to that exercise. But at the same time, when it relates to public institutions, the government has a duty to make laws to guide human conduct, because the confusion in this is placed purely at the doorstep of Lagos State government, which has refused to make laws regulating appearance of pupils in public schools. And I think now that the Supreme Court has delivered this judgment, I expected Lagos State government, the House of Assembly, and all the leaders of thought to meet together with the institutions, the religious organizations, and agree on specific modes of dressing that will accord with the rights of those who want to practice, but will not also offend on the rights of others who probably are not inclined in that regard. So there has to be a balancing. For the court in particular, before I end on this, the Supreme Court is a policy court. When you give a decision, it's a final court. I believe that in the exercise of the decision in respect of this hijab thing, greater consultations could have come. When matters like that get to the Supreme Court, they ask for amicus. They invite people. You invite Christian people, you invite Islamic people, you invite traditionalists, you invite the Attorney General, you invite the NBA, because you are about to make a fundamental policy statement that will affect the nation. I believe that the Supreme Court ought to have given opportunities for other people, rather other than those who took the case to court, to make contributions before coming to that decision. And that's why you are seeing this kind of reactions. Because if everybody had been brought into the picture before coming to that decision, it will have been probably well guided, in terms of how to ensure that specific pronouncements are made that will not cause crisis or tension in the polity. All
right, now, speaking about the rights of others, you're also aware of this Senator Ekweremadu matter. Lots of surprise when the news broke, and still many trying to grapple or understand and process all of the information that is just coming through. But for the part that you have read and heard, yes, it's a legal matter largely. What do you think of it?
Well, Chamberlain is quite unfortunate. And I think we prayed as parents never to be in this circumstance where the love to save our children may conflict, with laid down regulations and rules. And I think it's an eye-opener for all of us. It's about the circumstances of how we exist in our nation, Nigeria. That for you to undertake such important venture, you needed to be well guided legally to ensure that you follow due process. For instance, it's alleged, for instance, that the reason why the boy was asked, that's the donor, to come back was that his blood type did not match the blood type of the lady that was to be assisted. So which means that due diligence was not done. Because before you enter into such undertaking, at least the first thing is to ensure that the person that you are taking there is in him. And then if it is true that he's a minor, who is the guardian? Who is the parent? Who are the people who you consulted to be able to get their consent? Because a minor in law has no right to grant consent for such an undertaking. But this case is still in the realm of social media and newspaper publications. We've only heard from the Metropolitan Police. We have not had the case of the defendant. For instance, there's a document circulating online by which it is said that Senator Ekweremadu informed the British Embassy in Nigeria as to the purpose for which the donor was being taken abroad. But that it would not exculpate him from complying with due process. For instance, if the donor is a minor, the fact that you inform the embassy will not discharge you from fulfilling the requirement of the law to get the consent of his parents or guardian in order to undertake such a venture. What are the medicals you have carried out? You know, so, and I think it's a lesson also for our leaders. So many things we do in Nigeria and get away with, we can't practice it abroad. You know, and that's what the point we make every time, that we can get this country moving if our leaders do things right. Because, I mean, a person in that capacity, given his status, he will do it in Nigeria and nothing will happen. So, but my sympathies goes to Senator Ekweremadu, having regard to the fact that he undertook this assignment as a way of rescuing, you know, his daughter. But he has to do that with caution, so that in trying to rescue your daughter, you don't endanger the life of another person who is also a human being. You know, so I think that we should wait till July 7th, when we hear his own defense, before we'll be able to say this is what is actually the case.
Indeed, Mr. Digborua, as you rightly pointed out, the facts of the matter are still very sketchy, and there have been so many attempts to try and dig behind the scenes to see just what is happening. Emerging also that the boy in question, or the donor, would-be donor in question, was also said to have was not a match and was supposed to return to Nigeria, and as a result decided to seek asylum. Well, as you rightly pointed out, by July the 7th, we should be getting more information, maybe even as the day goes by, as to what exactly transpired in this particular matter. But let me quickly take you back to that Supreme Court judgment and the appearance of the lawyer in court, because some people say that, I mean, as you've also rightly pointed out, that that judgment has implication for the country. And we currently know that in Kwara, there's still a tussle in that regard. And some people think that the Supreme Court judgment has settled it. From what you know as a lawyer, did the Supreme Court judgment also, because if it was given in respect to a judgment in Lagos, has it also settled the matter in Kwara?
I don't think so. I beg to disagree, because as lawyers, what we say is that every judgment is limited to the facts of that particular case that provoked the dispute. And in this particular case is that Lagos State public schools were said to be available for people to appear there, you know, in any dress that suits the exercise of their faith. The circumstance in Kwara is totally different. I understand that there are some missionary schools that were released to missionaries. And for instance, in one of the schools in Kwara, there is a church inside the compound. There is a school inside the compound. So people attend that school in order to have access to education. So in that circumstance, it's a delicate situation that is different from Lagos. For instance, if a church is going on, maybe a weekly service, and then the school is also going on, and you see priests wearing their regalia, you see Islamic adherents wearing their hijab, you see Olokun people, you are desecrating the church, because you actually knew that it was a church before you enrolled to be in that school. So I believe that the circumstance of Lagos State is totally different from that of Kwara, and that we may not apply the ratio of this case to that case. But I think the Kwara State government has since taken steps to engage all stakeholders towards a resolution of the issues, because there's no reason why religion should cause problem for us in a nation where we have no food, there's no electricity. I mean, I believe that it's our leaders who do these things as a means of trying to curry favor from the populace, probably for the purpose of electoral value.
Well, I was also going to point out that to some extent, I think Osun also had a bit of that particular issue, where we also saw children being dressed up. I mean, the very fact that children have now been involved in this, you know, also raises questions. I think as a result of the uniform dressing across all the schools in Osun, there were questions as to how, you know, people of certain faith should dress, and before you know what's happening, parents were dressing their children in choir robes to school, etc. And even the I can't remember what it's called now, but the outfit that white garment churches wear to their places of worship, and children were dressed in that to go to school. So there have been questions. This is not the first time we're seeing that, but for a lawyer to be making such a statement, you know, there have been questions as to just what exactly it will take for us to be able to reach a decisive statement, make a decisive statement as a country, so that perhaps this sort of conflicts or opportunities for conflicts can be resolved once and for all. Do you see how that can be done? You know, since you now say that it could be on a case-by-case basis that this needs to be taken up.
I believe that the way we should approach this matter is to try and be universal. When I say that, we look at other jurisdictions where people practice their faith, you know, either to cover their hair or to cover other areas of their body in deference to the tenets of their faith. In the US, people in the army wear hijab. In UK, lawyers wear hijab. So I think that you shouldn't come here and then make it a matter of extremism. I mean, there's no problem in covering the hair. So it's for government to sit down with those who want to practice their faith, whether Olokun, whether Islamists, whether priests, to be able to regulate the exercise of that faith in such a way that it does not lead to extremism. I do not see any problem in anybody wearing hijab, honestly, Maupe. The thing is that you don't do it in a way that becomes the extreme, that you provoke others to also want to exercise their own. So let us agree what is the kind of covering we approve, and what is the kind of uniform that those who say they are priests can wear. And we agree together and sit down, because religion is quite very sensitive for us in the country. And it could provoke a lot of things, you know, where people are killed for alleged blasphemy. You know, so you don't have to take it to such extreme. Let's have some definitions so that if you go out of that context, then you can be dealt with according to law. But where you leave it to the discretion of individuals, then abuse will set in. And I think that's what's happening currently. So the government has a duty to sit down with the relevant stakeholders and agree on a template. You want to wear hijab, what is the area of cover? You want to wear the priest cassock, what is the limit of the coverage? And move on as a nation. I don't think religion should be national crisis. And it's our leaders who are exploiting these fault lines for their own selfish advantages.
Okay, let's move on to this, the matter which we were discussing earlier, which is about Senator Ekweremadu. As looking at just, you know, what has transpired, and I don't know, he's not been granted bail. Himself and his wife have been remanded in custody until July the 7th, when they give their own side of the story. But do you think that Nigeria has any role in this as we speak?
Yes, Malpe, I think that given the circumstance of what is playing out, I mean, it's a responsibility of our government. It's not even about Senator Ekweremadu. Any citizen of your country that has challenges of this nature, if there is no ill motive, if there is no fraudulent intention, if it's the genuine desire to rescue a daughter who is in distress, I believe any assistance that government should render, it should render it. Because like I said, as a parent, my heart goes out to Senator Ekweremadu and his wife. And I see so many parents go through this kind of agony and distress. But it's just to ensure that you do it in such a way that, you know, there's no further damage that may occur either to the would-be donor or even to the victim who is in distress. So I believe Nigeria should rise to this occasion and offer assistance, so long as this is in exercise of the genuine desire, you know, to intervene in the health situation of the daughter. I think Senator Ekweremadu deserves all our sympathy and prayers. And if there's anything we can do is to offer assistance in terms of legal representation, in terms of diplomatic engagement, you know, but, you know, in the UK, unlike Nigeria, they follow law mostly to the letter, and they will probably take due process in this regard. But by July 7, like we said, the greater details of these facts will have been out by then, and we will know what extent of involvement in terms of the alleged infractions of the relevant laws of Senator Ekweremadu and his wife. But at this moment, we can only pray for them and urge the Nigerian government to render any assistance that may be possible.
Yeah, so while at that, I mean, just as you said, July 7, a lot more will be clearer, because some of the information out there just loose ends that we can't seem to piece together, because if they say that there was a genetic mismatch, it suggests that that might have been found out in UK there or in a hospital over there. Because if they found out there was a genetic mismatch here in Nigeria, he will not have traveled to UK or something. And then they said he was in the Heathrow airport, that he was arrested. So while it's still unclear, so do you think that, I mean, that information where they say first, that genetic mismatch, does that suggest to you that, well, they carried out all of that test, and one wonders at what point then did they then decide that, or did they find out that he was a minor? So it's still a little unclear.
Generally, it just follows from what we have analyzed in the matter that the senator did not follow due process. And probably, I'm sorry to say, it's just in the exercise of the kind of privileges that our leaders take for granted when they are with us, which is not available when they go to other jurisdictions. Because if this were to be done in the UK, for instance, or in America, it is in Nigeria that you will have established the relevant conditions for transporting the donor. And if you didn't meet that condition, the boy would not have left Nigeria in the first place. So it just means that our leaders get away with anything. You know, unfortunately, in this circumstance, it has resulted in this because the senator desperately needed to take steps to save the life of his daughter. And I think the lesson there is for all of us, especially our leaders, to set good examples for our people by choosing to follow due process when they are in Nigeria, knowing that when they get abroad, they dare not flout those processes.
The question then will be, what is due process in this case? There's a letter circulating saying that he actually informed the authorities about this process. When you look at the laws in Nigeria, I mean, a lot of people are probably even hearing about this whole situation of organ, is it transplant or harvesting for the first time, really, and it's a new realm for them. In terms of laws in Nigeria, it's not quite clear. I know that there have been some work here and there, but it's still based on the basic principles of, you know, trying to help and all of that. Nothing really concrete. So what will due process be in this case, aside, I mean, if that letter is anything to go by, informing the authorities and perhaps, you know, getting some sort of consent?
A due process, for instance, will involve the medicals. Because even as a minor, the donor could not have traveled to the UK without applying for visa. And in applying for that visa, you will state the purpose for which he was to travel. And that purpose will be that he is to go and donate his organ. And for you to do that, this due process of proper medicals to match the blood of or type of the patient will have been done, you know, because Senator Ekweremadu is a high-ranking Nigerian former deputy president of Senate. Maybe he has a diplomatic passport. Maybe he has waivers. If he were to be ordinary Nigerians who will do this, I mean, it will be that you have to satisfy the requirement that the purpose for which the boy will be traveling has been met. I mean, and for him to go in violation of that due process means that those procedures were not followed. That's what I mean by due process, to say that we should take a lesson from what has happened.
So very quickly now.
But like I said, Kaude, by June. Yes, please go ahead.
Land on the points, Mr. Adiburu, very quickly.
No, I was saying that it's just for us that because the reason why these things happen is for us to take appropriate lessons from the event so as to prevent a recurrence in future. Otherwise, if this didn't come into the light the way it has come now, probably many Nigerians are doing this, going to India, taking people abroad, and nothing has happened. So it will just be for the authorities, NDLA, the trafficking agency, institutions, and those in charge of immigration to ensure that proper due diligence is done before certain approvals are granted for these kind of purposes.
So let me ask this question in a different way. The fact that there's a letter circulating informing the UK government of the intention, isn't that transparent enough to show his good intention such that the consent of the boy in question was obtained before the travel? And then again, organ harvesting is a huge word. If the consent of the boy in question was obtained, isn't organ donation the more appropriate word in question here to deploy to describe the situation and as a result could be perceived as legal?
Well, I will answer this question limitedly in relation to the document you said is circulating on the social media. It's possible that the senator obtained the consent of the parents of the guardian, but the letter emanating from him informing the embassy in Nigeria is not the one required under the law. You know, when you talk about consent, the consent will be the document emanating from the guardian, either from the parents, you know, and it will follow some process of law in terms of giving sufficient details to the authorities, the ministries of welfare. You know, you don't just capture a minor and then by yourself, you write a letter to the embassy and say that it's going for this purpose. That does not satisfy the requirement of the law in terms of consent. But like I said, I don't want to prejudge the facts of the case. I'm only answering this based on that letter alone. It's possible the senator has other documents by which he was able to legally procure the consent of the parents or the guardian. And that information itself will not take him away from fulfilling other conditions about medicals to ensure that, I mean, the blood group of the donor matches with that of the patient.
Well, incidentally, this happened at a time our president, or on the day our president was meeting with the Prime Minister of UK, Boris Johnson, and they spoke on different issues. This, well, we didn't hear that this came up anyway, but regarding the legal and maybe diplomatic angles to this, if you could help us just look into the future, what are the possibilities? I mean, this man is, I mean, at some point, one of the most powerful men in Nigeria, the Deputy Senate President. That's high-ranking political officer in Nigeria. So what are the possibilities in terms of diplomatic interventions? Is this a case you think Nigeria will take on? Is this a case that maybe will be pushed to bring to Nigeria, maybe for adjudication and all of that? What are the possibilities with this case, Senior Advocate?
Yes, thank you indeed. You know, in criminal law generally, we look at the mens rea. That is the intention, the purpose. Was there a criminal intent in this? From the circumstance of the facts we have, certain factors are indisputable. Is that there is a patient abroad who is a biological daughter of the senator who requires some kind of transplant. Secondly is the fact that he attempted, through the letters by which he informed the embassy, to make full and frank disclosures. So if there were errors along the line, it may not then translate to the fact that it's a case of organ harvesting, because indeed there is no mens rea, there is no motive on his own part in that regard. There is already clear evidence that he indeed wanted to go through a medical procedure of transplant. So I don't think he wanted to go and sell the kidney of the donor or any other organ. So once there is that a case which is not in dispute, I think all other infractions are things that can be looked into diplomatically to see how a soft landing can be obtained for the distinguished senator, if at all.
Now, I know that there are different perspectives that you look at for in law, but on the question as to whether or not the person, the donor, is a minor, that's going to be a key factor in this entire matter. Because the hypothesis is saying, look, in fact, some have seen the images of the person circulating online, and they wonder, is he really 15? So could they have relied on his own verbal submission that I am 15? So if they did, would they not be required to do further proof or tests to verify that he is not 15 or not a minor? And if it happens, it turns out that he's not a minor, will this case fall flat on its face?
Well, you know, there are so many angles to this matter. And like I said, the facts we have are quite very sketchy. For instance, before we commence this interview, I have since seen some kind of rebuttal from the person who is being circulated on social media that indeed is a different person and that he was begging that people should not link him with this particular matter. The issue you raised about falsification of age is a different criminal offense entirely. If the senator deliberately altered the true age of the donor, in order to present him as a minor or as somebody who is an adult, whereas he's a minor, that has nothing to do with organ harvesting. That's a different offense entirely. And I mean, that is something that he has to contend with, even apart from the issue of parental consent or whether indeed the procedure for transplant was properly followed. So there are many dimensions indeed to the matter, because once there is evidence that there is manipulation of the age, and then an offense may have been established. And so it will be for the UK government to go through the relevant procedure to determine the true age of the donor. They will take his blood, they will ask for his birth certificate, they will contact his parents, they will do their own due diligence to verify his true age. And that, if that is not in accord with the age declared by the senator, I'm afraid it may be a big challenge beyond what we currently are speaking about.
All right, so until July 7 then, where perhaps the defendant would have put up his own perspective on what transpired, then perhaps there will also be a lot more dots to connect. And then on to this other matter, which we seem to be contending with, the placeholder matter. Yes, INEC, they seem to be saying different things, even though they'll tell you it's the same thing. But give us your legal perspective on this question as to what the law requires for a placeholder, either for vice presidential slot or deputy governorship candidate, as it were.
Well, I think I should just give a small background, Chamberlain, to say that we've been on this controversy for some time, actually since 1983, as to how do we draw the line between the right of political parties to nominate candidates of their choice to represent their party, and then the right of members of the party and indeed the electorate to choose their own representative. Because I say this because under the Constitution, people have a right to come together to associate for the protection of their interests. So if a political party has been able to gather people of similar interests to represent them, you have to ensure that we draw the line between imposing people on them and then giving them the right to choose who should represent them. So there's been that controversy whether parties, once they have submitted the name of a particular candidate, whether that is absolute, whether they still have a right to determine whether to withdraw or substitute. So it's been quite challenging. In the past regime, the Supreme Court tried to ensure that they place a balance to say once you have submitted, you cannot just whimsically just substitute unless there are certain conditions. And that's what led us to the present, their very best to ensure the sanctity of the recruitment process, because that is what is at stake here, the recruitment process. because leadership starts from the primary. The election actually is just a confirmation of that particular process. So this is the foundation of the leadership recruitment process as to who is picked by the political parties to be their candidate to stand for general election. Because these people are the ones presented to the general electorate to approve or reject. So we are also concerned about the foundation because it's important. So to that extent, I believe that what the National Assembly has done is to give some latitude to the political parties to be able to nominate candidates of their choice, but also to insist that those candidates can only emerge from the will of the people. That's why the primary election has become so sacrosanct. And to ensure that whoever emerges from that primary election is not supplanted anyhow without going back to the people who elected him. So coming back to your question, whether there is issue of placeholder, I believe there is a kind of misdirection on the part of the political parties in this regard. And I think it is INEC that we should blame. I'm sorry to say this, and I will explain why I say so. Under the Constitution, Nigerians are fought to ensure that INEC is independent. Our Constitution in Section 159 has clearly stated that INEC should not be under the control of anybody in the discharge of his duties. So if in the circumstance we are, INEC is being pushed by the political parties, and especially, and I say especially, the ruling party, All Progressive Congress. Because if you follow this trend, these controversies don't exist in the opposition parties mainly. The PDP, ahead of time, conducted its own primary convention transparently. Less than some days thereafter, the candidate of the presidential candidate had already nominated his substantive deputy, nothing like placeholder. Before this time, the All Progressive Congress pushed INEC even to extending the deadline for the holding of presidential primaries. So I believe that INEC is giving the impression that it is submitting or surrendering its
But they told us it was IPAC
to
that did
the
that.
ruling party in particular.
Can you hear me?
Well, IPAC is a conglomeration of, I can hear you. IPAC is a conglomeration of the political parties, indeed. And the impression cannot be erased anyhow that the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, being a member of the All Progressive Congress, is clearly exercising some influence, over the electoral umpire in the circumstance of what we have seen so far. So INEC should insist on its independence. If you have submitted the name of a candidate as a presidential candidate and as the running mate, you have to go through the conditions stipulated under the Electoral Act. If at all there is need to substitute, but indeed there is a right to substitute under the Electoral Act, following certain conditions.
And that's what I'm about to read, Mr. Ekweremadu. This is what the law says. The vice presidential candidate, for there to be a substitution, the vice presidential candidate must write to INEC with a sworn affidavit saying that he's withdrawing from the race within the time frame provided by the law. So if the law says this, even though it doesn't recognize the name placeholder, some lawyers will say as a result, what the law doesn't frown at, it allows. So in that regard, are the political parties still in order by making available a surrogate, using another word now, pending the time frame that they're allowed to replace?
No, that place you read, is not in the Electoral Act. It's probably a contraption of INEC, as it were. But it is true. But it's a paraphrase of the Electoral Act. The only problem, however, is this. In case of the president, the governors, they have deputies. The senator is not required to have to nominate a deputy to stand for election. This controversy is only limited to the presidential candidate and the governorship candidate because they are supposed to, at the same time, nominate their deputies or vice president. And to that extent, the vice president or the running mate of the presidential candidate or the governorship candidate has no independent power of his own to contemplate writing a letter to INEC or any other institution to say, I'm withdrawing. he is subordinate to the presidential candidate. They sink or float together. He has no independent mandate of his own because he was never elected at any primary convention. At the time that Senator Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu was elected by APC, there was no running mate elected along with him. At the time that Atiku was elected by PDP, there was no running mate elected with him. So he has that ticket in conjunction with his own political party. So the candidate that he nominates to INEC to say, I'm withdrawing, there's no such power. It is the candidate and the political party themselves that have the power to say, well, we want to substitute our candidate, and then this is the reason why. Maybe the person is withdrawing, maybe the person is dead. So the controversy here is that the Electoral Act did not make reference in any way at all to circumstances of what will happen to a running mate or a deputy governor in that instance. And that's where there's a controversy, which I'm sure is part of the challenges we have generally in the Electoral Act. An act that is not up to 6 months that it was signed. There's so much controversy. The legislators themselves are up in arms asking the president to amend Section 84(8), and then this controversy again about the running mate. So, and I think it's a lesson to the legislators generally that they need to sit down and do a thorough job, on legislations so as not to cause greater controversy. Because it's too early in the day, after the amendment of the Electoral Act, to be having these kind of controversies. So I said clearly that there's no position or law empowering a running mate to write to INEC to seek to withdraw. It's not recognized under the law. In the eye of the law, he has no power to write a letter to INEC at all.
And INEC has said same, that there is no form submitted by the political parties saying that this vice presidential candidate is a placeholder. So what's the implication of this now? Does it mean that if the party is now writing in the next couple of days to say that we're replacing this name, INEC will not recognize it?
Well, what will happen is this. For INEC to seek to substitute, for a political party rather, to seek to substitute a running mate, it must also withdraw its presidential candidate. Because the running mate has no independent power. It has no independent value in law, in the Electoral Act. So if you need to substitute that ticket, you have to first withdraw the ticket of the presidential aspirant himself, and that will then give you the opportunity either to go for a fresh primary or to nominate a fresh person. So there's no place, that's why we say there's no place for placeholder. Because you cannot take away the ticket of the running mate and leave the presidential person empty. Because for you to withdraw from, for instance, to say you are withdrawing, what is the name of this man in Katsina that has been placed by, I think it's Kashim. For you to say you are withdrawing Kashim from the ticket of Asiwaju, you can't leave him empty. You have to take away his own ticket also, because you cannot leave the name of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu with INEC without a substantive running mate. So you need to remove his name first and then come back with his running mate. That's why we say it's not possible to be done in law. To say you are writing to INEC to say we withdraw Dr. Doyin Okukwe as running mate to Mr. Peter Obi. You can't leave Peter Obi alone in the tickets.
Incidentally, today is the last day, or at least today is the day for the publication.
No, I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Oh, great. I said incidentally, today is the final day for the publication of, the personal details and particulars of candidates of the parties, especially for Presidential and National Assembly, the EC9. So one will wait to see how that plays out. But are you saying, in essence, that once that publication is done, we see the name of the candidate and the running mate. The name of the running mate cannot be withdrawn or at least changed, except you also change the name of the candidate. So let's use, for example, for the APC. So we have the presidential candidate and a running mate. So if you say that if you want to change or replace that running mate, you also have to change the candidate. Is that what you're saying?
Let me break it down, Kade, for you to understand that that's what I'm saying. In the Constitution, because it's the Constitution that gives the conditions for qualification to aspire to the position of president or governor. And I have said that this controversy is only limited to the offices of the president and the governor. So what the Constitution says clearly is this. At the time a political party is fielding a candidate or submitting the name of a presidential candidate, that candidate must at the same time nominate a deputy. You cannot submit the name of a presidential candidate alone without a deputy. And we have a precedent in this matter. You remember the case of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. He was governor of Adamawa State at the time when President Obasanjo was also elected or being considered for presidency. And of course, he nominated Governor Atiku then as his running mate. So there was a controversy whether the deputy governor of Adamawa State then could automatically step into the shoes of the governor who is now being nominated to be vice president. And the matter went as far up to the Supreme Court. And what has been laid down as a principle of law for us in this nation now is that the ticket of the president and the governor is a joint ticket between the president and his deputy, and his vice president rather, and also between the governor and his deputy. So they cannot be isolated. There is no provision by which a political party could leave a presidential candidate empty without simultaneously having a running mate or a deputy governor. Mr. Degbora, so you cannot...
pardon me, but in the case, let's just hypothesize, in the case of the death of a running mate, for example, if there were to be a replacement, are you saying that you have to replace the candidate itself?
No, I'm saying that the conditions in the INEC, in the Electoral Act rather, are quite clear. The circumstance of death is being simplified in the Electoral Act. You would inform the commission, and then you have to conduct a fresh primary.
For the running mate now. I'm saying for the running mate.
Yes.
In the case of the death of a running mate.
No, there's no such provision. There's a lacuna in the Electoral Act. There's no provision for a death of a running mate. What the Electoral Act says is a candidate.
So in the same case,
there's no provision in the Electoral Act
the Section 31.
To running mate at all.
Right. Section 31 of the Electoral Act, of course, doesn't mention running mates. It just focuses on the candidate. So maybe that lacuna can also be exploited.
That's the point I made to you first, that, we take this back to the National Assembly. Because we've checked through the Electoral Act. There's no... The Electoral Act didn't talk about the running mate or the deputy governor. That's why some people call them dummy mates. That's why the political parties say they are placeholders. So for us, there is that lacuna. And the best way is to resolve it on the side of a decision of the Supreme Court, which has already served as a guide. And that decision says that you cannot leave a sole candidate for the office of president or governor without having simultaneously a deputy.
So, Mr. Degbora, an interesting thought just came to my mind, and I'm thinking, so the parties know how to arrange themselves. They call it a party affair. They eventually come to a consensus and do whatever it is they want to do. But for an onlooker, an average Nigerian, a lawyer, civil society, thinking, well, this is not the way we should carry on with our democracy. Can you challenge this in court? I know there's always a talk about locus standi and all of that. Maybe the court saying, what's your business in all of this? You're not a member of the political party. So is that something that can be explored, maybe as a way to even, boost or improve our democracy as a whole?
No, Kade, honestly, there's no need for this controversy. There's no need at all. INEC released its guidelines to the political parties. They knew they had the time. The controversy, for instance, that went on for so long in the All Progressive Congress as to whether there is a preferred candidate from the president, there is an anointed candidate. They had all the time. So they shouldn't come and force any urgency on the people of Nigeria. We should talk to our political leaders. They should play according to the rules. There's no need for this controversy at all. So it is for them to comply with the Electoral Act and ensure that there is sufficient overture on their part to play according to the rules. But I have sympathy for the politicians in what they have forced on us, to the extent that it is possible for us to go to court to challenge or find a way out. But it's too late now, because you can't hold another primary election, presidential election again. It can only be for another election.
But you
we can't
just said,
do this for the yeah.
You don't forget, Mr. Degbero, you said that there is no particular law, or at least there's no section that deals with the running mate. So if you say they should play according to the rule of the game or the law, there's no rule for this one, which is why I'm asking. Yes, I mean, we can wait on the National Assembly. Don't forget, they're still trying to get the president to assent to, in fact, they couldn't get the president. They couldn't, of course, override as of now. So maybe waiting for the National Assembly to go through this process might take some time. So I'm saying for people who think that this is not the way to go, let's find a way to challenge this. Could that be another option for them?
Yes, it's possible, but like I said, it will not be to the purpose of the current exercise. And Kayode, honestly, it's not that we did not have anything to go by. INEC released guidelines, and those guidelines also talked about running mates. And the INEC guideline has been recognized by the court as part of documents to consider, in determining issues relating to election. Apart from that, I think some of the political parties themselves also made guidelines on how to bring about a running mate. For instance, I think maybe in the People's Democratic Party, there has to be a consultation between the candidate and the political party, or probably there has to be some kind of election, within their own executive or within the stakeholders. So they had all the opportunities. But I agree with you that in the light of the confusion going on presently, it is good to get to the judiciary to resolve it, and remove the controversies so that going forward, we'll have a clear pathway we can follow, when other matters like this will arise.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your time and perspective this morning, Mr. Ebolu Adegborowa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure, sir.
Sunrise Daily returns in just a moment. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. So we're about to find out, to be or not to be, are the students about to get back to school? As the minister has announced. Now we're joined by Professor Emmanuel Osodeke, who is the president, Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU. Good morning, Prof. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, going by that announcement by the minister, many are optimistic that, who knows, this time it just might be back to school. We understand you were supposed to have a meeting yesterday, so start off with that. Did the meeting hold?
We were never invited to any meeting as yesterday, so we are surprised how he arrived at that. We never invited to any meeting.
None of your members were reached out to, because that was supposed to be June 23rd, Thursday.
Yes, they know the format. We have a secretariat. They know how to invite us, even online through the virtual and what do you call it, and often, but nothing was sent to us. Nothing.
And this is a head-scratching moment, just like this, because many wonder what's going on here. But wait, till now, there is no formal communication from government to the Secretariat of ASUU. That's what you're saying?
No, none at all. Not even online, nothing.
Okay, so when that announcement then went through that they had taken certain steps and they're about to go to school, what are people supposed to do? Are they not supposed to rely on that coming from government as though, yes, something is being done behind the scenes?
You see, the problem we have with this system, especially with the Minister of Labour, if you can go and tell the world that you have fixed a meeting with ASUU for Thursday 23rd, and you didn't fix any meeting, how do you expect us to believe other things you have said? It's an issue of trust. You have told the whole world you invited us for a meeting. We were at the secretariat yesterday, no invitation, nothing at all. So how do we believe what he has said? That's the question we should ask ourselves. He should confirm to this world that he sent a letter of invitation to ASUU for a meeting on Thursday.
So it appears as though this is how things have been going for the past 4 months and a few days since ASUU went on strike. And it beats the mind, really, because for a sector as important as education, you'd expect that, it will be handled with all form of seriousness. But maybe help us understand when last you at least had some form of interaction, interface, meeting, or correspondence with the government on this? When was the last time?
Thank you very much. Let's put it straight. You know, the Minister of Labour was active in this sector until he started pursuing a political career. And he told us directly through the press that we should go back to our Minister of Education, who is our employer, to resolve the issue. You all had it, is it not? And we went back to the Minister of Education. I interacted so many times with the committee headed by Emeritus Professor Nimi Briggs on renegotiation. And we met several times and concluded renegotiation 2 weeks ago. And they said they were going to take it back to their principal, which is the president and the minister, to look at it and come back to sign. So we have been relating with the Ministry of Education, and we are making some good progress in that direction. So we are surprised that from nowhere again, the Minister of Labour has come back again and telling the world what is not correct.
So, Prof,
we want to appeal. You should leave us alone. Let us discuss now with that.
Well,
you should allow us to discuss with our Minister of Labour for now. It is what it is.
So are you giving us the impression now that there's something going on with the Minister of Labour? Or did you have any meeting with him, any scheduled meeting, either yesterday or anytime soon? Sorry, Minister of Education.
None at all. Yes, we have been meeting with the committee he set up. That committee headed by Emeritus Professor Nimi Briggs. We've been meeting with him, and we are discussing fluently, and we have concluded. We are waiting for the government to come now to us with that document and sign. That's where we are. So we are surprised when the Minister of Labour came up again. If you recall, it is the Minister of Labour that created this problem we have. Initially he took up the process, and instead of renegotiating and solving the problem, he believed that the best thing to use is to go and use hunger weapon, stop their salary.
Okay.
So proudly said, stop their salary, and wrote as a minister. And then instead of solving the problem, you are looking for how to use weapon. In this country, at this present age,
well, it sounds like you're making more headway, I mean, from what you have said, with the Minister of Education and that renegotiation committee.
Yes. So you allow us to deal with him.
Right. So, but can you tell us, so what has been agreed upon now? Because 2 weeks ago, it's been 2 weeks. I don't know how long it usually takes for these things to be agreed and eventually pen is put to paper. But what were the terms of agreement? Did you decide to shift ground, maybe understand with the government that, you know what, there's not much money around, so let's cut down on our demands? Is that what you agreed to, or you still stuck to your guns?
What we believe as a union is that negotiation between two parties is purely within them until the issue has been resolved and it comes public. So we cannot divulge what we discuss because it's between we and the government committee. When the final thing is out, we will now know those who shifted ground, those who did not shift ground. But if both sides, both committees have agreed, which means both sides have shifted ground, and then we have agreed on a common ground. And we are waiting for the government to come back to us to sign that agreement.
So we take it that both parties have at least shifted ground, because if not, then there will be no basis for an agreement. So since 2 weeks ago, has there been... I'm sorry?
That is negotiation. In negotiation, both sides have to discuss. You can convince your opponent on what you believe is correct. And if both sides agree on that, then you move on. But we know this thing happened in 2021. Remember? During the era of Musa Luchipe, we also reached this agreement,
right,
and it took 1 year before they come back. So I want Nigeria to have...
just at the point he was going to make the statement about Nigerians. Professor Sodeke, do we have you back?
Speak to the government. I haven't...
Okay, the connection is a bit sketchy. Okay,
yeah.
Are you back
okay
now? Okay, it's okay now. Perhaps there was some interference. So just quickly before I yield to my colleague. So yes, it's good to see that you're speaking with the negotiation committee. There's been some sort of, compromise reached. But, it's one thing to have a meeting with the Minister of Education, but we know that because this is a thing that has to do with money, funds, the Ministry of Finance will also play a major role. In fact, the Ministry of Labour would also play a major role. So yes, you've said that you're making more headway with the Minister of Education, but you will still need the Minister of Labour, I imagine, and the Ministry of Finance. So are they all on the same page with this negotiation?
Thank you. If we negotiated with a committee set up by government, not with ministries, set up by the government, by the Federal Republic of Federal Government of Nigeria, as directed to the Minister of Education, who now composed the committee with the approval of the President. So we are not discussing with a minister without finance or education.
Okay, we keep getting that into
we negotiate. Sorry, with all due respect, we negotiated with the Federal Republic, a committee set up by Federal Republic of Nigeria. And when they came in, we asked them, do you have the mandate of the government to negotiate with us? And they said yes. And it's written down. So we negotiated with government, not with ministries. We thought by the time they agree with us, they would have gotten the view of all those people you are talking about. That's it.
So, Prof, is it based on these negotiations, the nature of which you have refused to divulge, that the minister is saying that negotiations with ASUU have reached an advanced stage, and as such, the strike will soon be called off? So can Nigerians, particularly the students, can they rely on this position by the minister that things are progressing?
Well, we cannot speak for the government. We believe that on issue of education, is the Minister of Education that should speak, who set up the panel on behalf of the government to talk to us, talk to the public. But I also know that minister, until all the issues are resolved, is also one of the, like us, is one of those who will not divulge what we are doing until all the issues are resolved and we are willing to sign. But you also, the Minister of Labor, want to catch public view, and you are telling us you call us for a meeting, which you know you didn't send any letter. So that is it. That's just it. We should have some reliability. And we pray that what he's saying is reliable, and it's a government view that very soon they will sign the agreement, implement all the things we agreed, and then we'll call out the strike.
The minister also said that UTAS has been tested and that NITSDA has tested UTAS and UPS, and then IPPIS will start testing again next week. What exactly is happening with the many propositions on payment system, and what is it looking like that both parties will agree on? Professor Shodeke. Prof, it appears we're having issues with the connection through to Professor Shodeke. We hope to get him back, but really, it doesn't look like we're making much progress. Well, or the negotiating.
Maybe not with the
parties.
Minister of Labor. Okay, yeah.
Prof is back now. Hello, Prof.
Yes, yes, thank you.
So, did you hear the last question about
No.
testing for, the different propositions for payment, for which government says there's some progress and that IPPIS will be tested again next week? So what is it looking like that both parties will agree on in terms of remuneration, payment platforms?
Well, the process is ongoing, and we hope this time that NIDA will not play politics with this as they did with the last test. In the last test, the program scored 99.3%, and they said the program failed, which means politics. I hope they will not also play politics this time. Are you hearing me?
Yes, go ahead, Prof. Go ahead, Prof.
And then, now, let's look at their program. Without testing, let's look at the program.
Oh, dear.
I pitched 2008 in Nigerian public service. Are you hearing me?
Yes, it's getting better gradually.
Good. I started with the public service in 2008. And from the report of their head of service 2 days ago, between 2010 and today, I captured 33,000 people who were not staff of the ministry. IPIS came into place in 2008, and by between 2010 and today, IPIS captured 33,000 people who Nigerians have been paid all this period who are not staff. You read it yesterday. Hello?
Go ahead, Prof.
So if that is a program that have created that mess for Nigerian university system, why are you talking about it? Within a period of 12 14 years. Oh my God. What is they captured 33,000 people who are not staff of this federal and being paid salary. And we are still talking about that program. I think what the Nigerians should have done by now, and we are paying so much to their benefactor, is to throw away that program, go back to the old ways. Where a ministry will come and NDA will come and defend their budget with the budget office, with National Assembly, and you account for it.
Well, it seems that that statement from the Bureau of Public Service Reform is that IPs and TSA saved the government those funds, not as though it wasn't effective. I imagine that was what he was trying to say. So maybe that's another argument for why IPs has been working. But particularly for UTAS, are you still sticking to having UTAS as your payment platform?
No. Let's go back to the argument first. Let's go back to the argument first.
No, it's not my argument. I'm putting out the statement from the DG of the Bureau of Public Service Reform.
Argument, not you. That argument.
Okay.
Yes, let's go back to that argument. The report they are talking about, and between those periods, IPs was the one who captured those people. How are you saying it's a reform? Those were captured between 2010 and today. IPs was replaced in 2008, which means IPs created that problem that they said they have reformed. And I think the government should throw away that IPs and let's go back to our old ways. We won't pay money to any.
All right, Prof. Let's see if we could just wrap up on this note, and if it can come through. So, there's a glimmer of hope.
The Nigerian academics can develop a proper program if government decides to do what he has agreed with us.
All right. Just one more thing, if this will be possible because of the connection being unstable. You appear to have given a glimmer of hope that there's progress in that negotiation going on with the Professor Briggs team. So the kind of progress that you're making and in that negotiation or conversation, is it such that when it's reached, not if now, when you reach an agreement, is it such that there'll be no strike whatsoever for, who knows, the next 5, 10 years?
Definitely. If government agreed to implement what they negotiated, that's our problem. If government had agreed to implement what they negotiated in 2009, there would not have been any strike within this period. And in that agreement, we also incorporated that if government have issues that they cannot do, they should call us back to meet every 3 years so that you sort out this problem. There's no need for a strike. But they will not call you.
All right.
You go to them, in this issue, we have done everything. We met with the president,
No, I'm talking about the agreement that you say is progressing, the conversation you're having with this team now. Okay, Prof, we'll have to just...
I just wanted to put this through before. I know the connection has been a bit sketchy. It looks like, members of ASUU and others are calling Prof saying, you know what, we like the work you're doing, so maybe that's why we're having that interference. But, Prof, to be clear, are you still sticking to the 2009 agreement or this renegotiation happening with the renegotiation committee of Professor Briggs?
You see, when you negotiate an agreement, when you sign, the old one goes away, you start a new one. That's the idea. But so we hope that what we have negotiated will be implemented and the university will...
All right, Prof, we need to thank you because I would like to imagine that it's predicated.
The university will be striking. Then we have best education. We start having students from all over the world coming to Nigeria. Start having lecturers from all over the world coming to Nigeria to teach. Just how people are going out. That's what we want.
All right, Professor Emmanuel Osodokia, President of Academic Staff Union of Universities. Thank you very much indeed for your time today.
Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you.
All right, so there you go. Hoping that when that agreement is reached, not if, because, I mean, I don't know, who can afford another if now? Because he says there's progress being made. So hoping when that happens, it will be such that they'll stick with. Because this team that is negotiating this agreement will not be the people that will implement it.
Same way we had... Pardon, go ahead, please.
Well, it's interesting to note that he said, when you asked him about a glimmer of hope, that is it possible that there will be no strike after the reach an agreement? And
I held on to that response, really.
You know, I just had to hold on to it on behalf of Nigerian students. He said, indeed, it's a possibility. It would be more than a possibility, Chamberlain. It would be a miracle if there'll be no more strike in Nigerian tertiary education system.
It's really sad because it's taking its toll.
Yeah. Well, we've gotten some response from our viewers, really. I know this is a big deal. In fact, all the discussions we had, big deal. Let's start with this one from Henry Okeke on ending ASUU's protracted strike. He says, 4 months and 10 days, I must say. There is no justification whatsoever for the current situation of our education sector. The irony of the situation is that our leaders once benefited from quality free education, but have refused to give back same experience to the young generation. Getting Nigerian students back to school should be a top priority and not election, he says.
Another Henry Ewonwu this time says, organ trafficking is a well-recognized crime according to, I believe, several international conventions and monitored by the UNODC. Several Nigerian hospitals are conducting organ transplants and are perfecting the practice daily. Section 51 and 52 of the National Health Act.
He says they are weak and they need to be strengthened, so to speak. So, look at this one from Festus. He says, the lawyer, who wears native doctor's attire to Supreme Court should be applauded. Our Supreme Court has basically compounded a problem in their ruling, Hijab ruling. The same Supreme Court must quickly override its own judgment to save Nigerians from chaos. But I believe that if you heard the latter part of Mr. Digborowa SAN's conversation, perhaps you might think differently because he shed a lot of light and put it in proper context as to why that was the case.
And Joseph Dare Olowa says the placeholder as the law is cutting one finger of lawless politicians. They're wearing, okay, I have to read this a bit differently now. It says the placeholder as the law is cutting one finger of lawless politicians. They're wearing the ring to another finger. Nigerian politicians always find a way to circumvent the law. How did we get to this concept of placeholder? INEC should stand firm on this. Well, they're the ones who give the room, and people will always find room within the law or around the law to see, what do they say now? The law is an ass? To, carry out their actions. But I'm sure that if there is an abuse of the process, INEC, the regulator, should be in a place to point it out and, hold its ground. Thank you so much for sending your contributions this morning and for watching throughout the week. Yes, it's Friday. I'm Mark Welgun Yusuf.
Yes, it is Friday. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Indeed, it is Friday. Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
What day did they think it was in the first place? Well, thank you for watching. I'm Chamberlain, so we'll see you next time.
Oh, goodness.